Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ohio Family Engagement Leadership Summit. We're glad that you can join us on this day of professional learning meant to take family, school, community partnership to the next level. My name is Alanistela Cruz Perez, and I will be the session's moderator. This session is session 9 and is charting the life course in Ohio schools. If you have any questions, concerns, or technical issues, please message me privately in the chat. To ensure that all of you get the most out of today, we ask that all participants turn off their webcams and microphones. If you have any questions for the presenter, please use the chat feature and I will pass them along at an appropriate time. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Be sure to use the hashtag OHSummit23 to share your thoughts. And we will begin.
Ready for that first slide, please? Thank you. Hello, welcome to today's presentation on charting the life course in Ohio's schools. We're so glad that you have chosen to join us. My name is Lindsay Havey. My co-presenters and I would love to really engage with you in the chat throughout, and we will take questions at the end as time allows. So please, throughout the presentation, just pop in any questions you have, as well as any connections or reactions, and we'll try to respond as we go. And then, like I said, leave some time at the end for questions. So to kick it off, while we're getting started, please let us know who is here by saying where you're from and what your role is in the chat. Next slide, please. As I said, my name is Lindsay Havey. I'm an education program specialist at the Ohio Department of Education in the Office for Exceptional Children. I am one of the primary contacts for charting the life course at the Department of Education, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Angie Chappell, Tracy Manns, Dee Marks, and Lynn Shields, as you can see on the screen. They're each going to tell you a little bit more about themselves during their portions of the presentation. Next slide, please. So first, let's talk about our learning objectives. After participating in this session, you as an attendee should be able to understand the basics of charting the life course. You'll see that we use the acronym CTLC throughout because charting the life course is kind of a lot to fit on a slide. So we took the shortcut here and there to make it a little easier. In addition, you'll know how this framework can be applied for personal reflection and decision making. You can contemplate various ways to implement charting the life course at work, and also explain some ways charting the life course benefits families, staff, and schools. Next slide. So we do have a packed agenda for you today in order to accomplish all of those learning objectives, and we're excited to share our information and engage with you around what charting the life course is, the Life Course Initiative through the Ohio Department of Education, perspectives from charting the life course ambassadors across 3 different educational roles, and specific ways that you can be a part of charting the life course if you'd like. We'll wrap up and hopefully get to those questions and answers, as I've already mentioned. I'll turn it over now to Tracy to kick things off.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm Tracy Manns, and I'm the project manager for the Family Resource Network of Ohio. We are officially the hub of charting the life course for the state of Ohio. I work for the Ohio State University Nisonger Center, and I am the mother of an amazing 25-year-old son with autism. Next slide, please. So I'm going to tell you, what is charting the life course? Charting the life course is a framework and tools that were developed by and for people with disabilities. The purpose is to help people with disabilities and their families at any stage in their life create the vision of what a good life would be for them, think about what they need to know and what they need to do to make that happen. We're going to help them find or develop necessary supports and discover what it takes to make a good life for them. Next slide, please. Our Charting the Life course, the foundation is our framework, and we have that core belief that it goes into everything we do, and that is that all people have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations just as others do in their community. We have the belief that all people, not just people with disabilities, but all people are to be included and considered in our vision. So that means family members and others who are involved in supporting our people. And we consider the family systems and cycles. Families change over time, and systems adjust as families grow and change. Next slide, please. So one of the other things we really do is we focus on life outcomes, focusing on experiences that point us towards a good life and not being wholly reliant on eligibility-specific services. We encompass talking about different life domains. We realize that people lead lives made up of many different areas or domains, and all of those should be considered when we're helping to plan a good life. Our domains include daily living, safety and security, community living, health, social and spirituality, and advocacy. And then we also consider the life stages and our trajectory. We focus on the specific stage of life that we're in now and use that to prepare for the next phase when you're planning a vision for a good life. Next slide, please. We consider individual and family supports. We see that little graphic of the bucket, and we fill our buckets full of all the information necessary to help us provide those supports. We use integrated supports where we help individuals and families use a variety of different types of supports to achieve their good life. And we include the ideas about policies and systems because we need to make sure that individuals with disabilities and their family members are involved in influencing the policies that affect their lives. Next slide, please. Real quickly, I'll tell you about the history of Charting the Life course in Ohio. We started in 2016. It was a joint effort between the Ohio State University Nisonger Center, the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, the University of Cincinnati, UCED, and the Ohio Developmental Disabilities Council. From 2016 to 2018, we were definitely an in-person only program where we sprinkled in a few virtual as necessary. And then, of course, when COVID hit, we converted the whole program to a mostly in-person program. When that happened, our growth exploded and we quadrupled our reach in 2020 from the previous year, 2019. And we have presented to every county board in the state of Ohio, both in 2021 and in 2022. And we are on pace to do that again. Just in case everybody doesn't know off the top of their head, we have 88 different counties in Ohio. And it's amazing to see that all of them at one level or another have reached out and agreed to gather more information and try and use some of the tools that we offer. And then finally, we're very excited to say that in 2023, we've partnered with the Ohio Department of Education to bring Charting the Life course into our school systems. I'm going to pass it back to you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Tracy. And we'll go to the next slide, please. Thank you. At the Ohio Department of Education, we realize the great benefits of the Charting the Life course framework and tools. Along with others in the state, as you just heard from Tracy, we're encouraging families, educators, and professionals to utilize these tools at all ages and stages of life. During the 22-23 school year, we began a Charting the Life course ambassador training initiative. The purpose of this training series is to expand Charting the Life course work throughout Ohio by providing a foundational understanding of the key principles of the framework, as Tracy just described, as well as to introduce the application of those principles and tools within educational settings in particular. So our initial group of 64 participants included 32 educators and state support team consultants, as well as 32 parent mentors spread across Ohio. We just began our second cohort a couple weeks ago in September with an additional 32 ambassadors. So our participants are passionate, they're knowledgeable, and they're really going to be instrumental in getting the word out about Charting the Life course. The ambassador training does include several webinars, live virtual training seminars, completion of independent learning activities, as well as related surveys. Our intended outcomes really vary based on the role of the participants and include things like implementing the Charting the LifeCourse framework within the region or school district by really educating colleagues, the school district, people like special education directors and staff, and individuals with disabilities and their families. We have intentionally established outcomes that are a bit more broad and open-ended because, we really recognize the importance of being able to personalize both the learning and the application based on the specific setting you work in. And finally, this year we have started a community of practice that meets quarterly for trained ambassadors to continue their professional growth through engagement with specific Charting the LifeCourse topics and tools and discussion about application within their roles. You'll hear a lot more about this from Lynn and Dee and Angie. This first group of 64 ambassadors is energized. They're enthusiastically embracing Charting the LifeCourse, and we've been really thrilled with their engagement in the training and now with how they're looking to integrate Charting the LifeCourse into their own work, where and how it makes sense. Next slide. At the same time that we've been training all these LifeCourse ambassadors, we've also been simultaneously working to build the capacity of the Ohio Department of Education around Charting the LifeCourse. A group representing different roles and offices across the agency completed guided implementation training, which is a 6-part training over 12 weeks. This provided our staff at the Department of Education with the foundational knowledge necessary to discuss the tools, concepts, and how they can be beneficial in our work. This also gives us the tools to support the work of the almost 100 ambassadors that we have trained or that we're currently training across the state. After completing guided implementation, we decided to create a Charting the LifeCourse work group. This internal team is charged with keeping the momentum going and leading this work in Ohio's schools, clearly defining a mission and vision for Ohio, supporting our ambassadors, and then supporting one another and considering opportunities for applying this framework to our work at the Department of Education. Collaboration has been such a key to this work in Ohio. You heard Tracy name off all of those partners that started the work, and now we have joined this group. So we know we're going to need to continue doing so moving forward. In addition to our internal ODE collaboration, we've been really intentional about connecting with others who are championing this Charting the LifeCourse work in Ohio. We're working closely with the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, the Ohio Department of Health, the Ohio State University Nisonger Center and Family Resource Network of Ohio, where Tracy is at, and the University of Cincinnati Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. We're hoping to add others to this work as well. Being able to meet at least monthly has allowed us to share updates about what's happening and discuss current happenings in order so that we can really amplify each other's work and co-create a shared message for families in Ohio that no matter who they're interacting with, the messaging is consistent. So with that, I'm excited to turn it over now to my colleague, Dee Marks, so you can hear directly from her about how she's utilizing Charting the LifeCourse in her role as a parent mentor. Dee?
Thank you. Next slide. Good morning. My name is Dee Marks, and I am the proud parent of 2 adult children with disabilities. 10 years ago, I was honored to be asked to serve as the parent mentor for Dublin City Schools. As a parent mentor, I support families in the school district as they navigate the special education process. I provide trainings for families and staff, as well as connect families to community resources that would most benefit their family's unique needs. Today, I'd like to share with you 3 of the ways that I use Charting the LifeCourse to engage families and team members in thoughtful, person-centered conversations. By using these tools, as well as several other of the tools Charting the LifeCourse has available, I am able to help families and staff delve deep into what a student has and what a student needs to lead a successful outcome for that student, family, and what the school ultimately desires as well. Next slide. One of the first ways I might use Charting the Life course is to help a parent or a student to reflect on their personal strengths, personal goals, and what is needed to constantly move towards attaining their goal. As parents, we can feel so overwhelmed in trying to make sure that we are doing every possible thing to ensure that our child is successful that we may neglect taking care of ourselves. I've often used the integrated support star with parents to help them identify where they have a natural ability to engage in self-care for each area of the star. For instance, under community, we might talk about their local metro parks and their hiking trails. Or under technology, we might identify calming apps that they can use. We discuss the relationships they have in their life and how those impact their state of mind. Once we move through each tip of the star and identify what they know and utilize already, we then focus on what else is out there. What other options are available to them that they haven't used, but they're interested in trying. We enter these on the right side of each tip of the star, and sometimes we create a trajectory together, building in the timelines to try these new ideas. It really helps parents to step back for a moment and think about themselves, what they need to refill their cup, and how important that truly is in order to continue to give back to their family. Another great tool is the life domains. This is the tool that you see on the slide. I've shared my personal experience with you on the slide by completing this one. I loved how the focus was on me, between taking care of my family, working, being a friend to others, volunteering, and etc., etc., etc. I felt stretched pretty thin. I worried that I didn't have myself set up for the future that I wanted, even though I had outlined every single detail for my son's future. So many of us have done this. I was able to use this life domains tool to consider what I wanted for my life in specific categories like community living, healthy living, safety and security, social and spirituality, and several other domains. Once I thought about what I wanted in these areas for me, exclusively me, I was able to prioritize when I wanted to focus on them. For me, I used a low, medium, and high priority rating. Low meant I wanted to do this in about 10 years. High priority meant that I wanted to do it right away. By doing this, it took some of the stress off of myself because it allowed me to have a plan of action with concrete areas of where I needed to focus my current energy. You can imagine how much of a relief this would be for other parents to know that they do not need to do everything right now. Next slide, please. Another wonderful way to use Charting the Life course tools is in IEP preparations and meetings. These tools help to keep everyone student focused, and they're a fantastic way of sharing with team members what a student and their family wants and what they don't want for the future of that student. By building in past experiences and what was learned from those, the team is able to consider the future expectations with valuable hindsight. This allows the team to plan actionable items for today that reinforces the student's trajectory towards the future they want for themselves. What a powerful way to build an IEP, right? Next slide, please. How many of you work with other agencies or entities and need to collaborate in order to successfully meet a goal? All of us do, in one way or another, right? I have found that since agencies have their own systems and procedures in place, it may cause confusion as to which agency is responsible for doing what action in regards to support that student's success. On this slide is a real example of how I've used Charting the Life course to help resolve that problem. I was working with a team focused on supporting a young teen in a residential setting. Multiple agencies were involved, including her local school district, the local Board of Developmental Disabilities, Children's Services, Department of Medicaid, Ohio Rise, and the residential facility. Week after week, for a year, everyone met and talked about what needed to be done for a successful transition into a new placement for this teen. Week after week, for a year, everyone made the same recommendations, but nothing seemed to actually happen. I'm sure each of you have had similar experiences, and you know how frustrating that can be for everyone involved and how detrimental it can be for the student. Finally, I made the recommendation for us to use Charting the Life course to gather our thoughts and ideas onto a visual document and then input that information onto a trajectory. You can see both of those actual tools on this slide. After gathering all the information on the integrated support star of what was there in place already and what items were needed, we were then able to take those items and put them on a trajectory in order of when they needed to be completed. These now became actionable items. From there, we assigned specific items to specific team members based on the relevance to their particular agency, and we put dates for when that actionable item needed to be completed. We were meeting, like I said, for a year before this Charting the LifeCourse session, and no significant progress was made. 2 months after implementing these tools as a plan of action, this student was successfully transitioned to her new placement. It was a learning experience for all of us, but more importantly, it was a true collaboration focused on the progress of that student. So I've discussed how I've used some of the Charting the LifeCourse schools on the ground with families and team members. Lynn, would you like to share what you've seen at a school district level?
Why, yes, thank you, Dee, I would. So thank you all. I am Lynn Shields, and I am currently a supervisor in the West Geauga Local School District. That's in Northeast Ohio. And as you may be able to tell from my gray hair, I've been doing this for a while. I've had just about every job that you can have in special education. I've been an intervention specialist, a supervisor, a director, and I was even an assistant professor at a small local college working with future teachers. And Dee, I think that what you were talking about is so important because it's more than just a good idea. Charting the LifeCourse has principles that we have to embrace as a belief system because everyone does need to live their best life. Everybody deserves that. And I did go through the Charting the LifeCourse Ambassador Program this past February. We started and we graduated in June, which was great. Right. So as it's much like maybe Bob commented in the chat that it was so eye-opening, right? It's like, how come we haven't done this? Right. So I'm going to talk about our district's journey. Right. And as you can see on that first slide there, that I started off with fusion. Right. And Webster's dictionary describes fusion as taking these separate pieces and then putting them into a whole. And that's what I wanted to do. So I'll talk about, how we started to do this. I'll then talk about practice, and then I'll talk about the feedback and trajectory for it. So before we go on to the next slide, though, let me ask you this question, and you might be able to see it in the chat box for you. How does your school district connect to the IEP? How do they connect that to what students want and need? Right. So that's what I'd like you to think about. Next slide, please. Now you might think, what is that on the screen, right? Well, what this is what we started to do to fuse Charting the LifeCourse principles into the IEP process. Now, Charting the LifeCourse is not just for special education. However, this is where we are starting. You have to have a starting point to be able to then take a look at it and see where do we want to go from here, and then how can we spread it. So for right now, we are looking at the special education aspect. And we took those Charting the LifeCourse principles and put them on the left, right? And then we took the sections of the IEP and put them across the right. And what we tried to do is see where these templates could fit. Now, you should be getting a link to a handout of the screenshot here that you see. And what it will do is maybe give you ideas. We don't care if you take this crosswalk and create your own after it. This is, like I said, the second iteration. There's probably going to be more. But this is what we want to share with you. We want you to be able to take things today and use them so you can start to incorporate things. Next slide, please. So these are some of the things that we looked at as we were thinking about how do we put these things together to make a whole for our processes, right? So the first thing we did is we looked at the all, and we said, okay, so what do we need to know? So we looked at where kids go after high school. And so I contacted the high school department and was able to get information from a senior day that they had where kids filled out where they were going after school. And what I found out is that a majority of the students know what they're doing, K-N-O-W, know what they're doing. But there are students with and without special needs who have no idea, N-O, what they're doing. So there's that big contrast there about, how come I don't know, right? And looking at responses of kids that didn't know, it's like they had not even thought about it. So how can we change that piece to it? So we looked at the 3 buckets. And as these were already mentioned, there are 3 strategies for supporting individuals and their families. And one bucket is discovery navigation. So that is taking that information, looking at the tools you need to navigate life. And this is why this is so important. It's not just for students with special needs. It's for everybody. The second bucket is connecting and networking. So it's making connections with peers and resources to help you navigate. And then the third bucket is looking at goods and services. And that's tangible day-to-day things you buy or use in public and private organizations in your community. And you may not be surprised if you're a parent mentor or work with a school district that a lot of people don't know. Families aren't sure of everything that's accessible to them in the school districts and in the community. We also looked at life trajectory, right? Where am I starting? Where do I want to go from here? This is going to be so important. It involves the student, the parents, and the guardians. And here's what really blew my mind, right? Because most of the time we tell students what they want, right? But now this asks students, what do you want? And here's the big part to me, what don't you want, right? Because we never really ask kids what they don't want. And that is so important. We also looked at the integrated support star because once you know where you're going and what you want to go, what you don't want to do, you have to look at what supports you need in the different areas and what strengths that you have in those areas, right? And so instead of the concentric circles, kind of like IEP processes work where we identify a need and then you do this, and then a need and then you do this. The supports are blended in to areas as you need them, right? So that's the beautiful thing. So here's another question for you. How do you or your school district help students with special needs plan for their future? How do you or your school district help students with special needs plan for their future? Next slide, please. What you're seeing on there as part of our fusion, right, because we're really taking this seriously, is we built in a transition matrix where intervention specialists can access age-appropriate transition assessments readily. And we looked at the activities and things, and after I went through the ambassador training, I thought, oh my gosh, these fit right in. So what we did was incorporate areas into it. So we've incorporated the life trajectory, the more detailed one, and there's a less detailed one where you're just exploring, right? And then we took the vision tool. There's a Charting the LifeCourse vision tool that's also can be used as an age-appropriate transition assessment, and the integrated support stars, right? So as we go on and build this, we are probably going to be able to put in more of those templates as age-appropriate transition assessments that can be used, right? So if you notice on our transition assessment, in an IEP, it goes post-secondary education and training, competitive integrative employment, and then independent living. However, our transition assessment, our transition matrix, excuse me, is a little different because we start out with competitive integrative employment. Because you really, to me, you have to know what you want to do in order to know what education and training you need, right? So that's why that's set up this way. Now, when you have the handout and you download it to your computer, the links may or may not work for you because they're in a Google Doc and it may say that you need permission. But feel free to take this as your own. You know, use it as a template. There's going to be a backwards mapping strategy before the transition matrix comes in. And that's so you can have students start to look at what do you want to do some research on it, what kind of training do you need for that, and is this something that you want to really work for? Because then you can plan out schedules and all kinds of things with this. So again, we don't care if you take it and just put your name in for our school districts, right? Use it how you want to use it. Next slide, please. So here's a question for you. How can school districts incorporate more of Charting the LifeCourse principles into their practices? Right, so here we have what we do. And what you're seeing there is a screenshot of a Google Classroom. We created a special education Google Classroom where we put important information, resources, and all kinds of things in it. You can go ahead and take that idea too, right? And it's easy access. And so one of the topics in the Google Classroom is Charting the LifeCourse. And you can see that we have a little video that explains it. We have the two different Charting the LifeCourse trajectories. We have the framework in there, and we have the integrated support star in there, because we really want to make this part of what we were doing. As we also look at it too, we have another Charting the LifeCourse ambassador. One of our intervention specialists at the high school in the special education department chair is going through the current training. So she's in that ambassador cohort that Lindsay talked about. And here's another thing that's very, very important, right? Support from district administrators to integrate this into our practices. And I'm lucky enough to have that at our district. And we really are taking the bull by the horn, so to speak, and running with it and making this. So we have a pilot classroom that are using the templates as they do IEP meetings. And that's with the person who's studying to be the ambassador now. So she's fully embracing this as well. And then also, too, we're going around to PLCs to talk to case managers about completing the trajectory with students on their caseloads. This can be done before IEP meetings so that kids are aware, right? You probably are going to need to know some of this information for when you schedule your classes. So we are really taking this to heart and how we can not only just, implement them, but embrace it. Next slide, please. So I'll wrap up with our feedback and trajectory. And I've been working with some families to fill out the life trajectory and also the integrated support star. Now, they did not really want to do it with me. They wanted to do it by themselves. So I respected that privacy, right? Because when we had to do it as ambassadors, it was like, oh, this is harder than I thought it was. Right? And I see Dee shaking her head because she shared all that she did with you, right? And once you go through it, try them for yourself, because it's like, oh, it should be easy, and it's not, right? You really have to think about it. So I'm going to have to do some follow-up phone calls. I've made a Google form and just said, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? How do you suggest that we may use these to get parent feedback? But nobody's filled out the Google form yet. So I'm going to call people and get their feedback on that. Now, I also did a trajectory for what we want and what we don't want. Again, we don't want it just to be special education. It's for all. We think that, these forms can also be used as students make their graduation plans. We want student-led IEPs. We want the district to embrace the mindset of Charting the LifeCourse principles, and we want parent community involvement. What we don't want it to be a fad. We don't want people not to embrace the principles, and we want to improve. We don't want to stand pat in practices. We always want to get better. And that's why I put in the superhero flying up the chart there, because we want to get there. Right. Well, I thank you for your time today. And now I'm going to hand it over to Angie, who's going to talk about the perspective from the state support team. So thank you, Angie.
All right. Thanks, Lynn. So hi, I'm Angie Chappell, and I'm from the state support team in Region 3, which is up in Cuyahoga County. And for those of you who either don't know, aren't from Ohio, or just don't know what a state support team is, we're a regional resource center. Basically, there are 16 SSTs across the state of Ohio, and we are kind of a branch of, or people always say the arm of the Ohio Department of Education, where we provide supports to all of our LEAs, or school districts, schools, community schools, other educational agencies within our own regions, around school improvement, but mainly around special education. Students with disabilities services for students with disabilities, transition services, graduation. So we provide a lot of support to our schools. So we work at a regional level. So you kind of heard from the parent, then you heard from a specific school district, and now it's kind of taking it farther out to that region. Each of the SSTs has a different region. Geographically, it can vary from 1 county to 5, depending on where in the state. I'm in Cuyahoga County, 1 county, fortunate enough to be, that 1 county, but we're a very dense county. But we have a lot of really great things going. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about, that perspective from that state support team perspective in our region, Region 3, in our county, Cuyahoga, which is up in the Cleveland area. So the 3 pieces that I'm going to talk with you about are about our focus on multi-agency planning teams as a region, and trying to infuse that within each one of our LEAs within our region. How we're using the Charting the LifeCourse framework as a region to guide our work, and then our collaborative, our multi-agency planning group that we have, and how that is our kind of our vehicle to carry all this work through. Okay, so if you can go to the next slide, please. So one of the things that a state support teams support is what's called the State Systemic Improvement Plan. So every state has a State Systemic Improvement Plan. It is the kind of the directive from the feds that's kind of say, what is your focus going to be as a state with regards to improving outcomes for students with disabilities? For us in the state of Ohio, our focus is around graduation, increasing graduation rates, and reducing dropout rates for students with disabilities. We have several projects that are going on around this, but one of them, again, as you've heard everyone talk about, that this is Ohio, the state of Ohio Department of Education is embracing Charting the LifeCourse as part of this. And so we are incorporating it as well into all of our work. You'll see how it says the CCTC. Our CCTC is our Cuyahoga County Transition Collaborative. It is our multi-agency planning group in our region. And it consists of the county boards of developmental disabilities, who have also all been trained and have an understanding of Charting the LifeCourse. Our parent mentor, our parent mentor group. Any other family groups? We have folks from mental health. Any other agencies that are providers or providing any services for students with disabilities, and our Ohioans with disability opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities supports as well, which is it used to be the BVR, our vocational rehab, are also part of our collaborative. And our focus, again, like we said, it's around that increasing outcomes for our students with disabilities, but our method for doing that is providing support to all of our folks in our region around self-determination, self-advocacy, and supported decision-making, and how we can build the capacity of everyone in our region to then make sure that our students, that our consumers, that our kids have those skills so that they can become as independent as they possibly can as they leave school. And using the Charting the LifeCourse tools and framework is our way of doing that. Okay, so if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things that we're working on is OCALI. So OCALI is the Ohio Center for Autism and Low Incidence. And if you've ever visited OCALI, it's a wonderful resource. I highly encourage go to OCALI. They have so much stuff, so much information. But one of the projects that they have is this called this multi-agency planning or MAP. And within MAP, it's about getting more people at the table to work together to plan with individuals with disabilities to increase their outcomes. And what we're doing with multi-agency planning, because we do have a really good connection already through our CCTC with all of the other agencies that may be involved in planning with individuals with disabilities as they're thinking about their futures. What we wanted to do is kind of take it to the next level where we have our own, we have our own map. Each individual district has their map, but then we have this larger map, multi-agency planning group, but we want to make sure that it is sustainable. it is really important for us to make sure that the work that we've done, which has been about 20 years worth of work together, and we are very, very fortunate in our region to have such a robust system built. And we just want to make sure it continues on, because those of us that have been doing it, we've been doing it for 20 years and we won't be doing it forever. So we want to make sure that it carries on when we're gone, because it's really important. And we are embedding Charting the LifeCourse tools and framework within our work, and we want to make sure that it is there and that it is sustained forever, because it is so important and it needs to become part of our multi-agency planning work. And I think, like, one of the things that I was just thinking this as I was listening to the other folks present, was about, like, using the trajectory. One of the things we have to do within the multi-agency planning project is we have to create our vision, our mission, all of that. And the trajectory is the perfect tool to do that with. So why not? So that would become our foundation. And that, as I was listening to Lynn talk and that's like, it's just kind of like, it hit me, no brainer. That is going to become our vision. It just has to be part of it. So anyway, it was my little epiphany as I'm listening to everyone talk. So that's one of our goals for this year, is that we want to make sure that we create sustainable structures to make sure that our multi-agency planning, our collaborative group, continues on, and it's there forever to support the needs of our individuals with disabilities. Okay, so if you could go to the next slide, please. So, within that thought, we want to make sure that we're not just looking at this as just some more tools, some things, right? That it's about the framework. It's about what the Charting the LifeCourse is. It's about those conversations. It's the way of thinking. It's thinking about how you can embed all of the different supports and services that are available to make sure that we end up helping our students to have better outcomes. Okay, so it's just like, we want to make sure we're continuing to remind people that it's not just about the tools. It's not just the papers. It's not just that one more thing. It's a change. It's doing something different. And everything that we're doing and everything we're embedding it in is we're trying to make sure that we help people to understand it's not something you're adding on. It's something that you're doing a little differently. Think differently. Change your conversations. Change how you're doing things. Change how you're talking about and who you're bringing to the table. Okay, we heard all about, Dr. Boone talking about, setting your table this morning. So who is at your table? So making sure we have the right people at the table. Okay, so if you go to the next slide. Excuse me. And so another way, our other focus around all this, like I said, we're talking self-determination, self-advocacy, person-centered planning, supported decision-making, embedding all of those tools. And so something else we're thinking about is IEP meetings, and how we are going to support folks with IEP meetings. So I am curious to know if you're involved with IEP meetings, who leads the IEP meetings where you're from? Who is it? Is it the teacher, case manager, students, someone else? Okay, if you want to respond in the chat, go ahead. But I just, whoever it is, it should be the individual at the center, right? No matter what, the individual that you're planning with, not for, should be at the center, right? We tend to think about planning for as opposed to planning with, right? And to the greatest extent possible, the individual should be the person who's leading their IEP. That doesn't mean they have to facilitate the entire thing. It doesn't mean that they're, going to be the sage on the stage, but they have to be a part of it. The individual is at the center, right? And we have to be able to teach these skills, and using some of the tools and the framework are the perfect vehicle for allowing that to happen. You heard from Lynn about how they're doing this within one of the districts. We need to take that and bring it across the region, across the state, so that it becomes part of what we do. It just becomes our business, not planning with. What is the saying? No decisions about me without me, right? That's this. Okay, that is what this is all about. Okay, so if you can go to the next slide, please. Sorry, I feel a little soapboxy there. Sorry about that. I get a little passionate about that one. So yeah, like I said, you've heard some of the folks already talk about some of the different tools. One of the tools that we are really focusing on with our work within our multi-agency planning group, within our Cuyahoga County Transition Collaborative, within the work we're doing within our region, is we're focusing a lot on this integrated support star. And I said, you've heard some folks already talk about this, that there are the different areas that conversations are encouraging that individual who's in the center of the star to think about all these different perspectives and parameters of their life, to think about what supports do they have available, what natural supports are there around community-based technology, their own personal strengths, their relationships, and then those eligibility-specific areas as well. What tends to happen from a school perspective and from an agency perspective is that we tend to live in the green part there, that eligibility specific area. Okay, that's where we tend to stay. As a school, you are eligible for special education services. So we provide special education services. As a county board of developmental disabilities, you are eligibility specific. We provide those eligibility specific resources and supports. That's where we tend to live. And as a school base, we stay there a lot. We don't often encourage looking outside of the green. Okay, if you could go to the next slide, please. So our goal is to get people out of the green. Okay, this is part of our vision. This is where we're going. This is a visual of our vision. So all of us that are involved in the CCTC in Cuyahoga County, we're all green. That's what we do, right? That's who we are. So we're trying to encourage getting out of that. We're trying to encourage teams to work together using the tools, to work together using the framework, to think differently, to change the way they're thinking about how supports and services are provided, to get away from making decisions for people to making decisions with people, to work more towards self-advocacy, self-determination, supported decision-making. And in order to have good supported decision-making, you need those supports. So helping them to understand and identify those supports in all of the other areas, in the community, within their own strengths, technologically, just within the relationships they have, to build the colors out in all of the rest of the star. Now, you're going to need some green, absolutely. That will stay, but it shouldn't all be green, and it shouldn't be heavy on the green. There should be something, and there should be equal amounts in every one of those other points of the star, and that is our goal. That's what we're working towards as a region. So we're hoping that if we can get this built out within our region, that maybe we'll build it out further to the state, and we'll just keep going with it. But that is our plan. Okay, so if you can go to the next slide. So this is just our little wrap up, that this is just a little bit more about kind of the summary of our work, that we have this council, this transition council, and we've been around for a while. We have about 150 members strong. We're continuing to invite people to come to our meetings. We meet 4 times a year, but the planning group, we meet all the time. We're talking all the time. We've also brought in Jonathan Martinez. I don't know if anyone knows Jonathan Martinez, but he wrote the book Supported Decision Making, From Justice to Jenny to Justice for All. Fantastic book if you've never read it. And it's about the journey of Jenny Hatch, who went from being an independent individual with a disability to becoming someone who was deemed needing a guardian, to then her fight to get back to becoming an independent individual. And it's a great story, and it's a great tool to use to be able to show that even if somebody else thinks that somebody is not able to make decisions for themselves, if that person believes and has the supports and the information and the systems that they need to be able to make their own decisions, they can, and they should. Everyone should be, entitled to live, laugh, love, play, and live their best life, right? And that is our goal. So that is us. So that is the state support team perspective. So now I'm turning it back over to you, Lindsay.
First, Tracy.
Oh, sorry, Tracy first.
That's okay.
All good, thank you. So in our chat, we had Atlanta say, boy, how can I get more involved in this? So let me tell you, the first and easiest step is, if you would like to just learn a little more information on your own, is to visit frnohio.org. There you're going to find a tremendous amount of information, our calendar of events, which I took a little picture of and popped in the lower right corner of the slide there. We have videos on how to use these tools. We have short ones, long ones, detailed, quick ones, anything you can imagine. And there's so much more available on this website. If you want to join in with others, we have an Ohio Families Community of Practice every quarter. If you want to find out the dates and register, those are on the website on the calendar page as well. But also the Ohio Department of Education has their own community of practice, which anyone is welcome to join and be a part of. And that's the picture with the pumpkin. That was our most recent flyer that we sent out. Those are also there on the website and on the calendar, and you can register to join and be part of those. Or one of the features on the website that we're happiest about is you can request training for yourself on the website. There's a place where you can go there, request a training. There's a drop-down menu of all the different types of trainings that we offer, and then we'd be happy to reach out to you and provide whatever it is that you need. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Lindsay.
Thanks, Tracy. I just want to comment, that's all of these different resources. It's great that there's an opportunity at whatever your time commitment opportunity is or your interest level. And then the opportunity to request training, I think is really amazing because you're getting something just for you and your organization. So that's really cool. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, great. Now, friends, here's where I'm going to lean on you and ask you to really engage with us in the chat to make the best use of the rest of our time together. So now that we have shared our information and hopefully you're catching our enthusiasm for this work, we invite you to let us know in the chat what resonated with you today. Did you have like any aha moments? As you were seeing, I know for me, I saw some commonalities across the different tools that Lynn and Dee and Angie were talking about, but application in very different ways. So thinking about the opportunities that were shared today, is there something that speaks to you that you think you might want to get involved with? What does it look like for you to engage with Charting the Life Course? And, you know, just as we're building this community in Ohio, we would really be thrilled to have you join us. So we would welcome your comments in the chat around that. Yeah, I see Alicia's putting in Lynn's fusion tools. Lynn, there was a question. There was a question earlier in the chat, maybe you can speak to, that was wondering if you have like a blank copy of any of those, or what would be the best way for people to approach you if they had questions about what you provide?
I would say email me, right? Because what I can do is share the Word document for the transition assessment, right? So you can substitute your own links in there. And then I could show you a template and share it with you. The crosswalk was from an Excel chart, right? And so there's different iterations of it in there, because at first I just started out with X's and saying, okay, you could use this here. And then I thought, no, we need something stronger than that, right? So I can share that with you. So my information was put earlier into the chat and it's on the slides. So please feel free to email me and I'll be happy to get with you and send you that.
Thank you. And I will comment, I went to that first community of practice that Tracy spoke to, the one with the pumpkin on the prior slide. And there were people sharing all kinds of great things like what Lynn had shared. So if you have an interest in kind of seeing that really practical application, that's a great spot to plug in, because that's exactly what it is. It's people who are engaging with this, and then they're trying it out and they're sharing like, oh, I like this, or I'm not sure what to do with this. And then, you know, we can all give feedback and share ideas. I see, do we have access to the slides? I believe those are going to be shared with all of the other conference slides. Yeah, okay. So yes, you will have access to that. Pam, that's interesting. This becomes a norm in transition meetings, even a course offered to students as an elective. Yeah, it kind of gets your wheels turning, doesn't it? And Bob is commenting about using the framework first on yourself. I had seen some comments in the chat earlier about that as well, and how powerful that is, and sometimes not as easy as you might think to start filling out something like that trajectory, and like it looks pretty simple on paper, but not always so easy to
Agreed, Lindsay. I think it really it leads to a certain sense of vulnerability when we start filling these things out, and we realize that when we do them on ourselves, how much we're actually asking of people, and how much we're asking them to let us in. And so I think it's great perspective to use it on yourself first, for sure. Great comments, Bob.
And I see Vicky is asking, yes, there are trained ambassadors out there. So the ambassadors that have been trained through our program are working within their regions or their districts or their settings. So like in Angie's case, she's more broad, she's regional. Lynn is district, as is Dee in her parent mentor role. If you're interested in guiding teams through the process, that might be where you reach out to Tracy.
Yep.
And say, what's the best way for my situation, for my team to get support in learning more about how to implement. Yeah, great.
That's exactly right, Lindsay. If you reach out to me, then I will connect you with an ambassador or 2 or 3. You never know, depends on what your area of interest might be, and we'll get you whatever training or help with implementation that you need.
And I will also say, you know, I'm currently in the ambassador training, and just because you are not an ambassador doesn't mean you can't be a champion, a lover of the tools, a user of the tools. So I would encourage you, if you are just kind of casually interested, don't feel like you have to make the time commitment of a full-on training in order to get that benefit.
And I back that up as well. Tracy can back me up that I've been using Charting the LifeCourse tools for probably 5 or 6 years before I was actually trained as an ambassador. I saw the relevance in it, and I would go to lots of online trainings and learn about a specific tool and how to implement that tool, and have used them in a wide variety of environments. And so if you need to start small and learn about one tool and how to use that one tool, there are lots of virtual trainings out there about that. So absolutely, you can learn to use the tools without becoming an ambassador.
Absolutely. I was going to share the same thing, and agree with you, Lindsay. You know, we love our champions. No, you don't need to be an ambassador, like you said, to be able to share and utilize and be super effective with it. The ambassador training just gives you additional training and really challenges you to think about ways you can use Charting the LifeCourse in your daily life and work.
And I see Pam is commenting about, you know, using the same language. I think that's one of the best benefits of these tools is like you can take it wherever, and it doesn't have this jargon or these special forms or something that become like a foreign language in a different setting. So yeah, great point, Pam. Let's go to the next slide. I know we have just about a minute left. I want to make sure we popped this in earlier, but here it is again. Sometimes if you're like me, I think of things later once I have a chance to sort of percolate and think about connections. And so just as a reminder, if we missed anything from earlier in the chat, or if you think of something later, you do have our contact information, and we're really happy to respond to email anytime. So thank you so much for being here today and engaging with us. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Yes, I wanted to say thank you all for presenting today and for sharing your time and knowledge. Please join every participant in thanking our presenters in the chat. We will have a 30-minute break. If this is your final session of the day, please be sure to use the following survey that I would send out. We ask you that you only take the survey once, so please do not take the survey until after the final session you attend today. Surveys will be used to administer contact hours, so it is critical that you take the survey if you are seeking credit. The next session will begin now at 12. So we have, like I said, some 30 minutes. And just remember to keep the conversation going on Twitter using the hashtag that I said earlier, which is OH Summit 23, and visit our page for the summit. So for all this information, and again, really, thank you very much for the information you guys put out today. It's really necessary.